Hey guys, just want to make this quick video. There's a lot of information actually floating online about this topic, but it was all kind of like randomly assorted, and it took me some time just to Google everything and kind of formulate a plan of attack. And so again, just trying to contribute back to the community here. But basically, I have a 2004 4runner, an SR5 four-wheel drive, and a lot of people seem to be having the same issues. And this started intermittently for a while, but then now it got to the point where every time I was pressing the brake, I would hear this like chirping noise, which is really, really noticeable. I had zero lights on my dash of anything of the sort, and here's a video of what it sounds like. It's very distinct. And that's just me every time I press on the brake pedal, it would create that noise. So like I said, originally it started, I don't know, maybe a year ago, a year and a half or so. It would just happen occasionally, randomly. But then in the past year or so, it just started getting worse and worse and worse to the point where every time I press on the brake pedal, it would create that noise. Again, I was not getting any lights on my dash. So basically just a bunch of Googling, and the basic answer was it was probably something wrong with the brake master cylinder or the brake booster. And if you guys look into kind of the quotes and the cost of it, it basically is a really expensive repair. It's not difficult, but it ends up, I want to say, like just eyeballing it from what I recall, is anywhere from like $2,000 or so. And so for me, that's a pretty expensive repair for a 20-year-old vehicle. So I looked into it in greater detail to try to figure out what the issue or what potentially the problem was. And it ended up being, a lot of people started pointing out, it was actually, hey, it was the brake accumulator, which is this little silver, cylinder to the left of the brake master cylinder component. And so it was kind of like, if you can replace that, it probably will solve your problems. And so in essence, long story short, I replaced it. And that noise went away, and I've had no issues since, right? So one of the difficulties of replacing this part is there's two versions of this, and for whatever reason, like the 2003, 2004 models don't have a nut on top of this. So it makes it like a real pain in the butt or ass to basically remove, but there's two notches at the top of it. And basically what you need to do is you need to get a special tool that will get you basically, or create your own tool to actually have pins go into these two notches so that you can basically unwind or unscrew this little metal cylinder. And so once again, just some general Googling or getting some ideas. There was two options or tools that allowed you to do this. The first one was the Rhino Gland nut wrench, which is this picture on the bottom right here. And I'll have links in the description to all the parts that I used. This was anywhere from, I think it was like 20 to 35 bucks. This is ultimately what I ended up using just because I didn't have to make any adjustments. It wasn't perfect, but it worked in well enough that it got off the accumulator relatively easy. The other option is to buy this 4-pin Hub Locknut Wrench. And so you'll see it here, except there's 4 pins on it. And so then the explanation or recommendation was then you would grind down 2 of these pins, and then the other 2 pins would match perfectly into that little brake accumulator, which I kind of eyeballed, and it looked like it was going to be okay. I would say in particular, the pins were not quite as secure, as in there's a little bit of play, while this nut wrench here, this Rhino nut wrench, had many options to put in different pins. So I just made sure to find one that basically had the most tightness, or basically the best fitting of them all. Long story short, it took probably about 45 minutes, maybe we'll say. Here's the old accumulator that I basically removed. And then in this picture here, you see the new one that has been put in. I know everybody recommends OEM parts and all these other things. I think the OEM one's like 300, 400 bucks. Just a bunch of like non-OEM knockoffs on Amazon are like 100 bucks. And so I'm not gonna lie, I've had really good success with all these random off-brand models. And so I just opted for the 100 bucks. Like you said, it took about 45 minutes to do so. Just to point out too, depending on who you talk to as well, some people will say that when you take off the accumulator, there will be this little gasket or O-ring, and then there's also this little piston and spring on basically connected to the base of that accumulator. And you'll see it when you take them off. I read online that basically if you clean up the O-ring or you replace it and then you clean up this little spring, sometimes the problem solves itself, as in you don't even need to replace the accumulator. For $100, I figured it was just worth it to replace the accumulator. Mine came with a new spring and then little piston and the new O-ring, so I just put those on as well. It's kind of hard to tell on this picture as well, but there's technically three little rubber grommet stops, or basically cushions. There's one right here, and right here. You kind of need to pry those out to be able to remove the accumulator. That was honestly probably the most difficult or annoying part of this whole procedure. And then obviously when you put the accumulator back, you need to, I don't know, yes, you don't technically need to, but I did end up putting the little rubber grommets back, and that was really, really annoying as well. Out of the 45 minutes, I would say probably like 10 minutes, 15 minutes of it was trying to remove and or put back those little rubber grommets. So long story short, for about 100 to 150 bucks, totally solved that problem. You do not, at least in my case, I did not have to replace the entire master cylinder. Saved a lot of money. But yeah, hopefully that helps. Like I said, look at the links for, or the description for the links to the parts if you guys need it, and or post any questions if you have it as well. Thanks.